On this week's Gridiron Report, we have the Tigers missing out on the Alex Bregman sweepstakes, the Pistons finally represented in the All-Star Game events, some college hoops after that. Let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the Gridiron Report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud.
All right, welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First, all Detroit sports podcast. Today is actually Thursday, February 20th, and we have some news from just about every Detroit sports team in one way or another, so let's talk about it. First and foremost, we have a few elephant in the rooms. As I just mentioned, today is obviously Thursday morning. I know we usually come to you guys on Wednesdays, so apologies for getting this out a day late. Kyle and I were actually out of the country at a beautiful wedding, so we had to do some traveling. I'm coming to you on this Thursday. Not going to be a common occurrence. And the other apology is this Batman-like deep voice. Unfortunately, I am battling a little bit of an illness we picked up during the travel to the wedding. So apologies if it's coming in a little bit weird, a little bit overly sexual in your earphones here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just first and foremost, you mentioned big shout out to Dre and Megan tying the knot in Costa Rica. So yeah, Tyler and I were down there for that. And yeah, I guess just before we jump in, Ty, I just want to give you a big shout out just for being here, podcasting through some travel adversity, getting back, quite literally just getting back from vacation. I know you had a flight or two canceled and got back way later than anticipated. So yeah, I mean, just a huge shout out to you. And yeah, let's get this kicked off with Lions talk. I know we have a new running backs coach.
Yeah, I put this in here in our show notes. It's not too much news coming from the Lions, but it's something come up over the last week or two that I thought was at least noteworthy enough. So the Detroit Lions have hired Tashad Choice as their new running backs coach. So obviously, we talked about it during all the coaching movements. The Scotty Montgomery was a possibility to take over as the actual OC. People thought that maybe he was going to be, if we didn't give him that job, he was maybe moving to a different organization. He didn't get the OC position, and he actually didn't move and leave the organization. Instead, what is going to be happening is Scott Montgomery is going to be moving to the wide receivers coaching role, which was obviously previously held by Antoine Randall, followed Ben Johnson to the Bears staff, a decent blow there. But Scotty Montgomery is going to be moving to the wide receiver coaching role, and Tashad Choice was hired as a new running back role. Now, the reason I kind of bring this out and point this out is the connection that Choice has to Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs obviously had his fantastic season this past year. Everyone knew he was primed for a breakout, even though he was still splitting time with David Montgomery. He had an absolutely fantastic season. Tashad Choice and Jahmyr Gibbs have a history together. So Gibbs coming out of high school, if you don't know the backstory, coming out of high school, he had about 28 offers. He had offers. He went on the Amon-Ra St. Brown and Equanimity St. Brown podcast and talked about the different offers. He had offers from basically any school he wanted to go to: LSU's, Alabama's, Georgia, and he decided to go to Georgia Tech because Tashad Choice was the running backs coach. So in order to get someone in the caliber of Jahmyr Gibbs to go to your school that is Georgia Tech over an Alabama or an LSU, he must be an absolutely incredible coach. He said that he was the reason he went there. Now, obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs ended up transferring to Alabama because he said Georgia Tech just sucked, which they did, and then he was able to be put on the main stage at Alabama and really blossom and was drafted from there. So just absolutely love that these two are making the connections. If Jahmyr Gibbs can make an even bigger jump than he did last year, he was already a top 3, top 4 running back last year. If he can make an even bigger jump, I think adding Tashad Choice to this offensive staff room, it will do just that for him.
Yeah, for sure. And we really don't want to badmouth Georgia Tech either. Of course, they're not maybe the caliber of their in-state rival, but, still a great program. Yeah, and shout out to the Yellow Jacks and shout out to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's huge. And I think it's probably the only Lions, talk that we have. The only other thing I saw, it's obviously NFL, the Super Bowl just ended, so there's probably not a ton to talk about, but the salary cap is going to be rising this year. We know the salary cap, it's not really real. It's kind of a fugazi. It's fugazi, but it is increasing from 255 million to about 280 million. And this is per Dan Graziano of ESPN. Sounds like a fellow Paisan, so shout out to Dan there. So yeah, just something to note. I know it seems like, every year, every month of the NFL season, there's talk about the cap and about, who you're paying, which players that you're paying. If you have, a guy like Jared Goff on the roster, and he's, garnering a pretty high annual contract. I just feel like, every year the cap does increase quite a bit. You just have more money to throw around at each of these players. So, yeah, I don't exactly know how it's going to factor into the Lions in all of our signings that we're going to have to do over the course of the next couple of years, but it certainly can't hurt.
Yeah, no one really knows how. I mean, I don't really know how the cap works. Like you said, each year it seems to go up, and it has to, because each year you get guys resetting the market, resetting history books for making money and stuff. So it has to continue to go up. Eventually it's going to burst, or maybe, I don't know. This can only mean good stuff for Detroit, because we have so many young guys that we, are slowly starting to have to pay. Having the salary cap goes up will make us be able to keep a lot of that homegrown talent here, while also, looking at guys like, we talked about Myles Garrett for a few weeks ago, and saying how, like, yeah, you'd have to trade whatever you would to get him, but then he also would be looking for a new deal after like a year. And if you're going to be paying all your young guys, would you be able to sneak him into the salary cap? And who would you be willing to part ways with, because you're paying that money to Myles Garrett instead? So no one really understands the salary cap, but it's going up, and that's only good things for Detroit.
For sure. And really, I think that's pretty much it from NFL talk. Unless you have anything else, I think we can probably move on to the Pistons.
No, yeah, NFL, nothing else going on. So let's jump into the Pistons. So we had, obviously, this past week, we have multiple different All-Star events going on. The NBA had their All-Star weekend. For the first time since, I believe, 2019, Detroit had an All-Star representative in Cade Cunningham, and he was actually an All-Star game, and then he was also invited to partake in the three-point contest. And then we also had Ausar Thompson taking place in the Rising Stars game. So there's just a lot to kind of touch on these. We're not really going to touch on the NBA All-Star format, as it were. Right now, we can touch on that when we start talking about the Red Wings, but just more about our guys and performing and how they did and stuff like that. So, Cade, let's start with Cade in the three-point contest. Kind of a little bit surprising to see Cade being involved in the three-point contest as it is. He was going up against guys like Jalen Brunson, Buddy Hield, Tyler Hero, guys that are like known sharpshooters. And while Cade has definitely gotten better at his three-point shooting this past entire season, really, and has taken his offense to a different level, he's not necessarily a 100% knockdown shooter, in my opinion, and kind of worthy of being in the All-Star game. That would probably, if you're going to pick a Detroit Piston to represent the city in an event like that, it's got to go to Malik Beasley, right?
Yeah. Malik's just a much better shooter. Yeah, I think Cade shoots like 35% from three. So, I mean, you probably have like 60 or 70 guys in the NBA that are shooting at a better clip than that, if not maybe a bit more. So, yeah, certainly not a sharp shooter by any stretch. That's just really just not his game. He's more of a, get by you, use his change of pace and change of direction to facilitate. And he can. That's not to say that he can't shoot, but yeah. So it is what it is. I mean, I don't really get out of bed for 3-point contest or really anything NBA All-Star Game related. I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later. We have a listener voicemail talking about just that, about All-Star games and kind of why people do watch or more importantly why they don't. But yeah, we talked about it, but we were actually both out of the country, so I didn't get a chance to watch pretty much any of the All-Star game. But I feel like I just didn't really miss much.
Yeah, Cade actually has the lowest three-point percentage out of all the contestants. So he was unfortunately bounced in the first round. I think he had 16 points, quote-unquote points in the three-point shooting contest, and was bounced by Jalen Brunson, who had 18, so put up a decent fight in the first round. But then Tyler Hero ended up winning it. So not a super great showing from Cade, but really one that was kind of expected. Like if we had, like we said, would have had Malik Beasley out there, I think he actually would have given Tyler Hero a run for his money. But like you said, nothing, not neither here nor there. But again, he was also, that wasn't just his only appearance. He also partook in the actual All-Star game because of this new format that they're trying. It's a whole bunch, credit to the NBA. They've tried a bunch of different things. Now they were doing a number of different teams that were technically drafted by the TNT guys, the Kenny, Shaq, Chuck. And it ended up being very quote unquote coincidental how the teams ended up. It was technically was drafted, but it was obviously set up beforehand. Cade only got like 4 minutes of game time, 4 or 5 minutes of gameplay, which was just unfortunate. It's supposed to be at least a little bit of fun, even if you are doing like the fucking 300 to 250 all-star games. Like at least you're getting runtime and guys doing cool dunks and pulling up from half court. This Cade only got 5 minutes. Now he was okay. He ended up being basically, I think he had like 5 points, hit his first 3-point attempt on 2 for 3 shooting. But really where he shined in his minutes was kind of going back and forth with the NBA's new golden child, Victor Wembanyama. He went up for a dunk. Victor blocked him, got the best of him, but then a little bit later, Cade was able to throw down just an enormous dunk, kind of right on Victor Wembanyama's head, introducing him to the league. So, again, he had played a lot better in the All-Star game as opposed to a 3-point contest, but just because of the format, he didn't really get to showcase anything real special.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually I saw both dunks, or I should say I saw the dunk and I saw the Wemby block. Wemby actually also Wemby also had a block. A dunk on Cade as well. So yeah, they were going back and forth a little bit. I think that Cade's dunk, quote unquote, on Wemby, it was more of a fast break, and Wemby was just kind of, just hustling back. So he was in the vicinity for sure. I wouldn't exactly call that a posterizing dunk by any stretch, but we'll claim it. We're a pro Cade podcast, and we're Cade stands, so we're definitely gonna claim that dunk. Anything else about the All-Star game? I know viewers were down. I think you have in our notes here that Detroit is actually a front runner to host the game in the future.
Yeah, so it came out today that 2028 Detroit is a front runner, like you said, front runner to host the NBA All-Star. Adam Silver was here, I believe, last year, possibly for right around the time of the NFL draft. And people spotted him down there. I think someone saw him out at dinner, and the rumors started to swirl that Detroit might be starting to make their way into getting an NBA All-Star game, just based on the performance that the city put out for the NFL draft. And it was rightfully deserving. People were saying look what we just did. We deserve an All-Star game. It's now being reported that Detroit is the front runner for the 2028 All-Star draft. I mean, we can talk about the All-Star events and all that stuff and whether it's watchable and everything. It still generated almost $400 million for the city of Indianapolis. People still go and it creates revenue, go out to dinner, all that stuff. And whether they're not watching it on TV, it still creates $400 million for the city. And I think Detroit would just absolutely knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fans, that's what they do in Detroit. They show out. Doesn't matter what it's for. You mentioned the NFL draft. I mean, that was gigantic. Typically in years past, the draft was the Lions Super Bowl. Now that we're hopefully a little bit better, we've turned the corner. That's not the case anymore. But yeah, I mean, it just shows that Detroit, at the heart and soul of this city is a really, really good sports town. And so, yeah, as much as I'll dog on the All-Star game, may or may not tune in, if it was in my city, I think I would still go and I would still, partake, especially if I, wasn't doing anything else the weekend. So, yeah, that's cool to see. Yeah. And I think, probably just last thing for me on the Pistons, they haven't played in a while, right? It was the All-Star break, but they actually returned to action on Friday night to take on Victor Wembanyama, who we just talked about quite a bit, and the San Antonio Spurs. The game is in Texas, in SA, and so it's going to be a really big test. I think these two teams, similar caliber teams. I know their records are similar enough. I feel like the Pistons probably have 3 or 4 wins on the Spurs, but Spurs did just get De'Aaron Fox in a trade, so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably anyone's game. It's in San Antonio, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs were favored by a couple. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that and seeing the Pistons show out.
It's similar to the Red Wings. We talked about the Red Wings last week that they were going through a really rough stretch, but they were playing really well, and the break was almost maybe a bad thing just because of momentum and stopping the feeling of winning and stuff like that. The Pistons were riding a 4-game win streak going into the All-Star break, so then coming out and playing against a team like the Spurs, who you're right, normally before the trade deadline, I would say okay, not bad. I think we can keep that momentum going. But now that after adding De'Aaron Fox, it's a whole different team. So it'd be a real big test. They had to come out swinging exactly like they were before. This game is going to set the tone for the last third of the season. If we're going to make that playoff push, you need to have games like this. So we would be remiss if we didn't mention Ausar was also in the Rising Stars game. He was drafted to the same team as his brother Amen. Not really much to report there. Ausar actually technically was a reserve. They had some injuries to guys like Brandon Miller, and Victor Wembanyama was basically elevated to the actual All-Star game as opposed to the Rising Stars. So he was added as a replacement. Not really much to report back for him. I think he finished with like 4 or 5 points. Ended up having a missed lob to his brother. That kind of maybe brought his grade down a bit. Got 10 minutes of playtime, which is better than Cade. But really what people are unfortunately going to remember from his time in the Rising Star game, his team was up 37-35 in a game that's a race to 40, and he missed 4 consecutive free throws. So unfortunately, watching that and then watching Amen, I think Amen had like 10 to 12 points or something. Not great for the Pistons representatives there. But at least he got the call. He got the experience of playing with other All-Stars and playing with a lot of the other Rising Stars and experiencing what it's like to be a part of that. Because it's deserving. He's been fantastic this year. So had to mention him. He was out there as well and representing the Motor City for us.
Yeah, shout out Ausar. Tough scene, missing 4 free throws on the stretch, but I mean, I don't think anyone puts too much stock in the Rising Stars game. So, it was cool to see him out there. And I guess, speaking of All-Star games, right, we have a listener voicemail, dude. Should we jump into that right now?
Yeah, let's give it a listen right now.
Hey, guys. Big fan of the podcast. Thank you for blessing my ears every week. Truly one of the highlights of my day-to-day is listening to you talk about some Detroit sports. Question for the both of you. With the lack of hype for all the All-Star games across the sports, between all of the 4 major sports, none of the All-Star games really bring the attraction that they used to. Whether it's the not big stars competing in real events, or the Pro Bowl turning into a flag football game, or the NBA no defense and just doing whatever they want out there. It has really lacked what brought us to be a fan of those big events growing up. If you guys have any ideas of how to revamp all the All-Star games, bring some new juice into it, maybe some new games or a new format, would love to hear your take on it. Personally, I was thinking of doing all 4 sports and having an all-star weekend and having these stars represented from each of the teams competing in different events. That way you could see Mike Trout and Ohtani versus LeBron and Durant and Cade Cunningham and Hutch and Goff and all the stars all at once. Just a thought. Would love to hear what you guys think about it all and any new ideas to revamp the All-Star weekends between all the sports. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the voicemail. I like this one because it's something that, everyone is talking about the All-Star situation across all 4 major sports. It's something that so many different ideas have been thrown around. Credit to the NBA. They've tried a few different ways. The MLB seems to maybe have it figured out in a way. They at least get guys out there, and it's really hard to kind of dog an MLB or take it easy in an MLB game unless you're like maybe not going for dives that you would, and you can't blame the players for that. I don't really think that MLB has that bad of a game. I think they're putting it in, and then they also do like fun interviews with the players while they're out there, and the home run derby I think still has some juice into it. So I think MLB pretty does it okay just based on the overall effort. But like you mentioned, like the caller mentioned, it's hard in sports that require such high impact and high velocity and a lot of effort, just because so much is put on these seasons that any sort of injuries or any sort of miscues or anything can derail a championship run, especially in football. You mentioned it's being basically put into a flag football version of the game, and I'll tune in every year for like maybe 2 minutes just to say that I did, but I haven't watched that, and I truly don't have a fix for the NFL just because like I said, no one's willing to go out there and be a punter and get leveled by Sean Taylor again. I mean, that was just the days of old NFL. They were just tough motherfuckers. No one's going to do that. In the NBA, it's a little bit about that, but I think it's more just about effort. And these guys nowadays, they're not even playing back-to-backs. Why would they want to add in another game? I saw The Athletic did a poll about, what players think they should do, specifically in the NBA. They asked NBA players after this All-Star break what they think should do, what would help. A number of them mentioned doing U.S. versus the world, which I know has been tossed around a lot. A number of them mentioned adding higher incentives as if they need more money. So I think it was like Jalen Brunson or someone. Their idea was to give $1 million to each winning team member. So they obviously want more money in that. I don't know which would be the best way. I think for the NBA, they did it a few years ago. That was okay, and that was the first half and the full game scores. The team that was winning on that, a large sum of money went to a specific charity, and those charities were there in the stadium cheering them on. So then if they, whatever team won, that charity's got that money then and there right there. So they had at least a little bit of, something to play for, the kids that were literally courtside watching them. And I think that was maybe a good idea. But I really like his idea. I like I said, people have been throwing around different ways to fix All-Star season and All-Star events. I've never heard this idea be thrown out there before. So I really like the ingenuity. It would be definitely interesting to see, Tiger Woods going up against, Victor Wembanyama in cornhole or something. But I love the ingenuity.
It's caller, yeah, you might be a visionary. And I guess first and foremost, man, thanks so much for the warm wishes. And yeah, to everything that you said, everything Tyler said, I'm pretty much in agreement with. I agree that there's just a straight up lack of hype for All-Star games. I do think baseball probably does it the best. Although I do think, baseball, they probably had a lot of meaning to the All-Star game when the winner of that game actually determined home field advantage in the World Series. Of course, they changed that rule. I think rightfully so. I think the winner of of an All-Star game shouldn't just determine home field advantage. That should be, what you did, your body of work throughout the regular season. But again, I digress. That kind of took like a lot of the meaning away from that game. The NFL you mentioned, I mean, there's just no way of getting that back to normal. I mean, these guys just take such vicious hits, especially when you have the game like right around the Super Bowl. So of course, the players who are playing in the Super Bowl, they're obviously not going to be playing in any kind of All-Star game, Pro Bowl game. And then, the other players, there's just no incentive. You get hurt, and then all of a sudden you miss out on a contract, you miss out on millions and millions of dollars. So yeah, I don't know how to fix that, but what can you do? How do you improve the All-Star game experience? Well, you can do what the NHL did and absolutely nail it by switching up and saying, we're actually not going to do an All-Star game, at least this year. We're going to host the Four Nations tournament. And we're going to have some of the, best and brightest players from the Four Nations that are most represented in the NHL. And that's, Finland, Sweden, the United States, and Canada. And we're going to pin you up against each other. And they absolutely nailed it. The ratings were high. I haven't seen the ratings yet, but I've just seen like so much, text flowing in, people on social media saying, how good these games are. I mean, it's just they absolutely nailed it. And so I think it's probably a really good transition into the Red Wings and into Team USA and the Four Nations tournament. And, just a huge win that they picked up in the group stage a few days ago against Canada. It was actually over the weekend. Just a really big 3-1 win, extremely meaningful game. And you can tell it was meaningful because it was meaningful to the players. There was, some boos. The game was played in Canada, in, I believe, Montreal. Boos towards the United States national anthem. I guess, of course, we're not going to get into, the political aspects of that. But I really do think it rubbed the players the wrong way. And we saw 3 fights in the first 9 seconds of the game after puck drop. So that just goes to show you how much that game meant to all these players in a situation where you easily could have just had people, phoning it in and not really caring, because it is their All-Star break, the only break that they get from a very grueling and rigorous season. And actually the opposite happened. And, there was, I think, about 50% more hits in the Team USA versus Canada game versus a normal NHL game. So these guys are actually going at each other and going even harder than they would in an NHL game, which is just incredible to see. Detroit Red Wing Dylan Larkin really shined against Canada on Saturday. He scored the go-ahead goal on a sweet 2-on-1 fast break, which ended up being the difference in the game. So just really awesome to see. I mean, just a really big win for the United States, a game played in Canada, and Team USA is into the finals. So the Four Nations final is Thursday night. So tonight, if you're listening on Thursday, Team USA versus Canada, 8 p.m. Eastern time in Boston. Quinn Hughes, who was not on the roster, he's actually rumored to play. They switched out a player. He hasn't been confirmed yet, but it would be just huge to see him play. Of course, he'd be one of the centerpieces on the team, certainly the centerpiece of the number one power play for Team USA. So that's huge. I think I got to give the edge to Team USA just because of our goalie. Connor Hellebuck, one of the best goalies in the world, and I think he's going to be the difference maker on Thursday. So I'm super excited to see that. Ty, I don't know if you're going to be tuning in tomorrow night or if you have any more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love what they're doing with the All-Star break. You and I were both maybe not confused, but just kind of uninformed by it. We weren't really sure what was going on with it. We were kind of like wondering when they're going to squeeze in with the All-Star break, and then come to find out it really was the All-Star break. So I think the NHL definitely needed and needs to do a better job kind of advertising it. But they're doing it. I mean, it's just is working so well with these players. And I, like you mentioned, there is definitely that aspect of, I think just hockey in general in these different countries is so prevalent, and there's so much passion to it that it can work like this. I don't know if it'll work in other sports just because hockey guys are insane. I mean, we can't even get guys to go out and play a basketball game, and like you said, they're dropping their gloves 3 different times in the first 9 seconds, and risking broken hands and broken cheekbones and stuff like that. So I love it. It's so electric. I will absolutely be tuning in tomorrow. Like I said, I really wasn't sold on it just because I didn't know what to expect of it, and I cannot get enough of it. You mentioned how well Larkin's playing. I think he started on the U.S. roster as a fourth liner, and has proved and kind of moved his way up at least to the third line last I saw. And then Lucas Raymond for the Swedes is playing really well. I love it. I think the only thing is maybe other countries will be disappointed that they aren't being represented. But this is also, as a side note, a great look into Olympic hockey, which is coming up here shortly, that the NHLers are able to play in for the first time in quite some time. So it's a great taster of that, and I think it's just working. Chef's kiss. It's working perfectly for them.
Yeah, it's a huge taste for the Olympics, and I am so excited to see NHL boys back in the Olympics. And yeah, you mentioned that, and I think I might have mentioned it too, but these are the top 4 nations represented in the NHL are Canada 1, USA 2, and then Sweden and Finland, I believe, are 3 and 4 in that order. Apologies if I've gotten that wrong, but those 4 nations actually make up, I think, about 90% of the NHL, maybe a touch more or a touch less. So that's why those were chosen. And it's actually really cool. Saw something on social media earlier today where just not 30 years ago, the actually majority of the league was made up of Canadians, and since then the percentage of American-born players has been increasing steadily, and of course the percentage of Canadian-born players is decreasing, just as a little bit more parity among those two nations, with Sweden and Finland also increasing quite a bit. So it's just really cool to see that the game of hockey is really growing outside of Canada, and you're getting some really good American-born players. You're getting some really good players from Sweden and from Finland as well. And so I do think that makes a tournament like this so special. And as you get more, Swedish players in this league, it's only going to get better for Four Nations tournament. So I don't know if this is going to be, just an Olympic year thing. I think that would be really cool if they did it every, 4 years as well. Just to make it really special. But regardless, I just love what the NHL is doing, really thinking outside the box and really getting people to care about these games.
Are we a hockey country now? Do we just take over the hockey world?
I mean, I think we did. One of the best scorers in the league right now, the pure scorer, Austin Matthews, he's American. There's so many great American-born players right now versus even 10 years ago, you might have a Patrick Kane, but then, most of the other stars in the game are Canadian. And that's not taking anything away from the Canadian-born players. They're still incredible as well. I'm looking at you, Connor McDavid, or Nathan McKinnon. But it's just going to show that the game is really growing in the United States, and we're getting some awesome stars that are U.S. born, which is sweet to see.
And that's actually a fantastic segue, because two of the main sort of feeders into that pipeline, while they're not all U.S. born players and stuff, but a lot of the feeders into the professional pipeline is Michigan and Michigan State. And so let's just jump right into that. So we have a little bit of college hoops for you guys, as Michigan State and Michigan are playing this Friday, 8 o'clock on Fox. We haven't talked any college hoops on the podcast before, but being that it is the one of two, obviously, games between Michigan and Michigan State, I wanted to just touch on it real quick. So you have Michigan State ranked 14th at the moment, sitting at 21-5 versus 12th Michigan, sitting at 20-5. ESPN has Michigan slightly favored at about 56%. And Michigan State, and honestly, Michigan State's been struggling quite a bit over the last, 5-6 games. Even the games that they've won in the last 5 games, they have been down, 14, 15 in the first half, and had to claw their way back and end up getting the wins against, obviously, both the Illini, and then they did the same thing against Oregon. Michigan's won 5 in a row, so Michigan's really hot coming into this kind of marquee matchup. I think it's at the Chrysler Center this weekend, or this Friday.
Yeah, it is. Michigan, I would say, pretty confidently is the hottest team in the Big Ten right now. You said they ripped off 5 straight. I feel like it might even be higher than that. But even if it is 5, winning 5 straight in the Big Ten is no small feat. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge game. I feel like the Spartans just historically, they never play well in Ann Arbor. And I think if it's still called Chrysler, it's called. It is a very tough environment to play in. I feel like we haven't won there in a while. I feel like I'm pretty sure since 2020 the teams have split. And so, yeah, I mean, with, MSU obviously playing really well in the Breslin Center. But, yeah, Spartans have been up and down for sure, especially in the month of February. We knew it was going to be a gauntlet. They have picked up 2 pretty big wins back-to-back at Illinois. And then, of course, last night, a huge win at the Breslin Center, beating Purdue for the first time in, 5 games. So, I mean, they are riding off a high right now from Purdue. Michigan, they're probably going to be better rested. I think they haven't played since this weekend. Of course, MSU just had a game yesterday on Tuesday. So it's going to be interesting to see if MSU's depth will be enough, or if they can, have that one, absolute dog who can take over a game. And we've seen it at times. It's been Jaden Akins, although I don't think he's been very good for the past month or so. We've seen really, really great performance out of Jace Richardson, a freshman, dropped 29 against Oregon. He's been playing really, really well. If he can step up, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see who can step up on just going to be a really rowdy road environment, and I think one of the harder places to play in the entire Big Ten. So. Yeah, I give the slight edge to Michigan. They're at home. They're well rested, and honestly, they're playing better. But it'd be a huge win for Michigan State if they could pick it up.
So State is riding a 2-game win streak against Michigan. They won last January in East Lansing, and then they won last February in Ann Arbor. But before that, the last three meetings were split. Yeah, and the home team won all of those. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because you mentioned it exactly. The Spartans don't have that go-to scorer that they've had in the past, whether it's Travis Trice, Denzel Valentine, Miles Bridges, Tyson Walker. They just are kind of more level, and it is definitely harder to scheme for. Yeah, Cash is the best one, of those bunch maybe even. It's really hard to scheme against because you can't zero in on all right, Cash is Winston. He likes to do this. Who's going to be guarding him? You're the guy who's going to be taking him on most of the time. He likes to do this. Is what you do. You kind of have to figure out. You can't put your best defender on him. You got to be ready for a different guy to go off. So that definitely helps. Where Michigan has the edge is that they have Danny Wolf, who is absolutely insane. He is a 7'1", basically a 7'1" point guard. He's so smooth with his handles. Him and their other center, another 7-footer, Vlad Golden, is averaging 15.7 points. They basically just work together in tandem. in pick and roll with each other and have 2 7-foot pick and roll guys is so impossible to guard. Vlad's hitting 3-pointers at 45%, and Danny Wolf is hitting at 36%. So like they are just dominating teams in the paint and with the 2 big guys, and whether they do actually connect on that pick and roll or they just step out and hit the 3, it's really difficult to stop. So that Michigan State will definitely have their hands full. They don't really perform that well against the pick and roll. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to really, buckle down and stop those 2. Now, if they're able to do that, outside of those 2 guys, Michigan kind of struggles a little bit with the rest of their roster. They have a few guys that can go off, randomly. Their next highest scorer is Trey Donaldson at 12.7. But it really is just those 2 guys, Danny and Vlad. And that maybe Michigan State matches up well against them because we have sort of that 3-man rotation of Shimon Zapala, Carson Cooper, and Jackson Kohler, that they can kind of rotate them through and foul when need be and use their fouls and stuff like that. But it'll be definitely interesting. We don't talk a lot of college hoops on here just because, as we say in the beginning, it's the Lions First Auditory Sports Podcast. But as we're getting into March, these teams are going to be popping up, and we're going to be definitely diving into these teams more often than we have been, talking about March Madness and the games and stuff like that. So really marquee matchup. Both these teams are going to the NCAA tournament. Both these teams are going to make noise in the Big Ten tournament. I have an article coming out here shortly just saying like the college basketball landscape is better when these 2 teams are good. Going back to, John Beilein days, Izzo had the utmost respect for John Beilein, and that gave me the respect for John Beilein. Like, John Beilein ran a very clean, clear-cut program. He had those guys going out and playing the right way. And so when Tom and Beilein both had their top-notch teams, it was always a classic battle trying to win that Big Ten. So hopefully Dusty May can put this team together and keep them going. I mean, they're playing better, like you said, better than any team in the country. So it'll be a fantastic matchup and a lot of implications for the Big Ten championship outright.
For sure. I mean, these 2 teams, it's one of the best, if not the best, college basketball rivalry, in my opinion, in the entire country, certainly in the Big Ten. And to see both those 2 teams, Michigan at number 1 and Michigan State at number 2 in the Big Ten standings, it's exactly what you want to see if you're a fan of college basketball in general. So, yeah, tune in Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fox, and it's going to be a slugfest. Okay,
so let's get to our 5th and final team to talk about. It's a new record for the Gridiron Report with teams we're covering here. The Detroit Tigers. So not much to report on them, only that the Alex Bregman sweepstakes has finally come to a close. Now, we talked about what Alex Bregman would mean to this team, ad nauseum over the last few weeks. Everyone wanted him here. I think all the Tigers front office wanted him here. The only one who didn't want him here, apparently, was Alex Bregman. Because he went ahead and signed with the Boston Red Sox on a 3-year deal averaging $120 million with opt-outs after each season. So the rumor that was put out on the different offers from each team are as follows. So the Astros offered him a 6-year deal worth $156 million. Tigers offered a 6-year deal at $171.5 million. The Cubs were 4 years at $120, and then the Red Sox were 3 years at $120 as well. So you and I had this conversation about, I kind of said, we dog on Chris Ilitch so much for being cheap, for not being even half the owner that his dad was, for not caring, and rightfully so. The guy treats this as a business, and I don't know if we'll ever win a World Series under him. But I felt like this was a rare circumstance when he did everything he could to try and get a star to come here, offering the 6 years, $171.5. So it was the most overall money that he offered to Alex Bregman. Bregman is obviously a bitch and doesn't want to bat in Comerica. He'd rather go bat at Fenway Park, where it is better for handed batters like himself. But do you still, and you were kind of at the time a little bit on the opposite side, that because the Red Sox offered him less years, more money, more AAV, do you think that was the best deal? You still on that? Or you think, how do we feel about the offer that Chris Ilitch made to Alex Bregman?
I think it was a good offer. I think if you're Alex Bregman, you probably heavily consider the Tigers' offer. 6 years, $171.5 million. It's nearly $29 million per year. I think it's an incredible offer. I get why Bregman took the Red Sox deal. It sounded like flexibility was really important to Alex, and he chose the deal that ended up having the most flexibility, the least amount of years. I think he has a player well, if he wants to leave and maybe go chase more money elsewhere, knowing that, in 3 years, he's still probably going to be worth a decent amount and can get another contract on top of it. But I do think that, at his age, taking a 6-year deal at, almost $30 million, $29 million per year. I mean, it's still a great deal. So, yeah, like you said, shout out to Chris Ilitch and the Detroit Tigers for really putting that money on the table, giving Bregman a really good offer, in my opinion, probably the second best offer that he had, if not the first best offer. And yeah, I don't know if he was, like you said, scared away from the park dimensions at Comerica Park. Of course he's been batting at Park, where it is a short porch in left, and now he's going to the Red Sox, which is another extremely short porch in left, albeit with the Green Monster. So yeah, maybe he's just banking on hitting moonshots over there for the next 3 years and then figuring it out after that. But I thought it was a big bummer, but I thought Freud and Chris Ilitch, they really did the best that they could with their offer.
Yeah, I like I said, I agree. I think this is not a time we can dog on Chris Ilitch. Maybe single Chris Ilitch, now that he's recently a divorcee, is going to be going out and swinging for stars. I don't know. Maybe it's a trend he's going to continue. I hope so. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And we're not a Red Sox podcast. You can go find some other idiots doing a Red Sox podcast. But that might be a disaster waiting to happen, because they asked Rafael Devers if he would be willing to move positions to make way for Bregman, who is a good Gold Glove third baseman, and Rafael Devers is one of the worst third basemen defensively in the MLB. And Rafael said absolutely not. He will not be moving positions. So maybe wrong move by Alex Bregman. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if chaos ensues. But yep. So for now, we will get no Alex Bregman. We're probably gonna have to roll with the platooning of Jace Young and Matt Vierling at third base, which at surface everyone's like, oh, like Alex Bregman as opposed to those guys. Like, come on, that's gross. But like, you look at Matt Vierling's numbers. He was more than serviceable there, and that's if Jace Young doesn't correct the sort of rookie issues that he had and isn't able to really add to this new young core, because Vierling's only 28 years old. He had 257 last year and 16 home runs. So like, Matt Vierling is a decent consolation prize that we already have and don't have to cough up a bunch of money for. And this is definitely, as I'm saying this, just me talking myself out of Alex Bregman.
Yeah, sorry, Bregman. We really don't. We didn't want you. We never wanted you. But all joking aside, yeah, Matt Vierling's a dog. Yeah, I mean, we loved Matt Vierling last year. He was, a veteran presence, which is funny to say because, he is only 27, 28 years old, whatever he is. But he was just that much older than all of the, the young 20s that were on the team last year that are, coming back this year again. So yeah, we're gonna have to. Use what's available to us. And if it's Jace Young and if it's Matt Vierling, then so be it. And I still think this team has a really young core and can build on a lot of momentum from a really tremendous 2024 campaign. So let's go Tigs.
I think AJ Hinch put it best. If you do want to be a part of it, then come. If you don't, then we'll beat you. And that's just simply what these gritty Tigers do. So, now that situation, albeit a prolonged situation, is over with, as we get into spring training and move towards opening day, which I don't know if you saw this. Did you read about this? Did you see it? Opening day this year in Detroit is on a Friday.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. Wait, is the home opener the actual opening day opener? Because I thought they usually do that on Thursday.
I thought so too, but this year I have not confirmed it. Someone at work told me it's on a Friday, and they were talking about doing an outing or something for their team down there. I have not confirmed it, nor will I look it up. I'm just going to continue to believe and look forward to opening day being on a Friday and obviously having that next Saturday off.
Nice. Well, you heard it here first. Opening day, Friday. See you in Detroit.
All right. So let's wrap up with some grit of the weeks. So I will go first. My grit of the week, I have a few of them here. Like we said, we were out of the country, so I had a lot of time to think on the traveling and stuff. So I have a few grit of the weeks, people that I believe deserve a shout out for the Detroit. So the first and foremost, got to go Chris Ilitch. We just talked about it. I think Chris Ilitch finally did what fans wanted him to do. Like we said, you might be a little bit here or there based on his offer. Should have thought we should have more higher AAV, or we're happy with his. Or I think you have to be happy with his offer, and he actually did try. So I think Chris Ilitch finally gets an attaboy, pat on the back for not treating this like a business and actually trying to put together a winning team. I'm sure Scott Harris had a big hand in that. But shout out to Chris Illich. He's going to get one of my grid of the weeks. My second grid of the weeks, I just saw this Red Lobster. I saw Red Lobster is bringing back Lobster Fest. I'm not entirely sure what Lobster Fest is, but I love Red Lobster, as you know this. And so I was retroactively mad at them for taking away Lobster Fest, but now that it's back, I think they deserve a grid of the week for bringing that back. Don't know what it is again, but I'm going to be looking into it and probably be going to a Red Lobster here shortly. And then my final grid of the week, FanDuel Sports Network. We talked about it last week on the podcast, how the Guardians, I think you said it was the Guardians, went ahead and they're now offering a package that you can basically go to clevelandguardians.com or something and watch all of the Cleveland Guardians games for about, I think you said it was $99. You get all their games online there, and they're on the TV package. It was just announced today. FanDuel Sports Network now has a plan or concepts of a plan in which they're going to be offering a package of $20 per month to stream all Detroit sports. So that would be the Tigers, the Pistons, and the Red Wings on Amazon Prime. Now, they were talking about it for a while. Amazon Prime was buying what was then Bally Sports. It's rebranded into FanDuel Sports Network. And they were talking about doing something like this. I did see now it kind of has some legs, and it sounds like maybe if they can get this thing going, we can, in the time for opening day, which we just said is on a Friday, get some sort of package, $20 per month on Amazon Prime for all Detroit sports. So grid of the week to just, if that ends up happening, everyone involved, everyone can have grid of the week if they can get that to happen.
Hell yeah, that's huge. Yeah, shout out FanDuel Sports Network. Yeah, no free ads, even though we're totally giving them free ads. But no, that's gigantic, and I would easily pay $20, especially living down here in Texas, to be able to watch, not just the Tigers, but if you throw in all Detroit
right.
sports, minus of course the Lions, which that's the NFL, that's completely different. But yeah, if I can watch the Red Wings and I can watch the Tigers and the Pistons, yeah, take my money, $20, that's easy. Cool. Yeah, I think I only have one grid of the week because, I'm a man of integrity, Tyler. And, if we give out too many grids of the week, it just kind of dilutes this very prestigious award. So my grid of the week, it's going to D-Boss, Dylan Larkin. We talked about it. I probably talked about it at length. But Four Nations, USA versus Canada, in a really, really meaningful game in which both teams are, slugging each other and they both want to win. And Dylan Larkin, your center, your captain for the Detroit Red Wings, just marches right down the ice on a breakaway and buries one past Team Canada's goaltender for the go-ahead goal, and ended up being the game winner. And I'm really proud of him, really proud of Dylan Larkin. We've really seen him grow up right in front of our eyes, coming from, being a young 20s, a rookie in the league. And now, he's been with the team for so long now, worked his way up to captain a few years ago. Which we all know how meaningful that is to be the captain of the Detroit Red Wings. They don't just grow, actually went years without one after Hank Zetterberg. So just to see him ball out on one of the league's biggest stages, or the nation's biggest stages as far as hockey is concerned, and to score that goal. And I'm just really looking forward to watching him on Thursday. Of course, last Saturday we couldn't even watch the game. We were out of the country. But I will be tuned in on Thursday to watch Dylan Larkin and to watch Team USA drop the puck, maybe drop the gloves a few more times against heated rival Canada. And I'm psyching myself into it just talking about it. And if any kind of hockey accent or Michigan accent's coming out, that's just me fired the fuck up. So let's go USA. Grid of the week, Dylan Larkin.
So real quick, first of all, I'm going to act like you didn't just slander Red Lobster and Lobster Fest after they just recently won Grid of the Week. How dare you? Second of all, yeah, it's great to see Larkin getting the national recognition that he rightfully deserves. I know he was an all-star his rookie season, but that was for like his fastest skate. And now he's actually proven, being able to do other things on a more national stage. So it's, the hometown kid. I just love to see it. Like I said, I think I read he started on the fourth line. He's worked his way up to the third line. Hopefully he continues moving up. So shout out Larkin. He absolutely deserving of this award. As always, Chris Illich, anyone from FanDuel Sports Network, even if you're just an intern, anyone from Red Lobster, and if you were the creator of the Lobster Fest, and then obviously Dylan Larkin, open invitation to come on the show, give a little speech, accept the award, and then go on your way. So as always, always welcome there. So, okay, that is the grid of the weeks. And that is our show. So thank you for tuning into this week's episode. You can find Kyle on Twitter at Kyle_Marino. You can find me at Twitter at Dutton_Tyler and at both Piston Powered and Champaign Athletics. Join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That number is 313-306-7939. And if you like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars and leave us a nice review telling us how good of a job we did.
Thanks, y'all. Restore the roar.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.